G's are among the most powerful and disturbing enemies that Leon and Claire will encounter during the events of the game Resident Evil 2. Spawned from those who've been infected with the Golgotha Virus, G's often resemble massive tumorous monstrosities that have found their way into the sewers beneath Raccoon City, driven only by a constant, intense desire to find other humans with similar DNA so that they can reproduce and expand their grotesque species.
What the hell was that?
The story of the G's as we know it begins with the discovery of the Golgotha Virus at the hands of a man named William Birkin. Deep within the laboratories of Umbrella's secretive Arklay Mountains facility, research into a new type of parasite that had been developed by Umbrella Europe would hit an interesting snag when it would be injected into the body of a remarkably resilient test subject named Lisa Trevor. The parasite, which had previously killed all of its test subjects, would be astoundingly destroyed when injected into the body of Lisa. This surprising and confusing turn of events would result in a full-scale examination of Lisa to determine what exactly had occurred. And during the course of that investigation, Birkin would uncover something fascinating within her mutated body, which he would dub the G-Virus. This discovery would drum up major interest from his employers at Umbrella, and a new facility would be erected underneath neighboring Raccoon City where research into the G-Virus would be conducted with Birkin at the helm. For several years, research at the facility would progress as expected. The capabilities of Golgotha to repeatedly and unpredictably mutate a person's cells in an attempt to repair damage to the host's body was an exceptionally promising side effect that Umbrella had plans to exploit. However, while on the surface, research was progressing quite smoothly, behind the scenes, tensions between Umbrella and Birkin would begin to escalate. The end result of this disagreement being the first real trial of G in the wild.
Roger.
Are you telling me that he injected the G-Virus into his own body?
In September of 1998, William Birkin would be fatally wounded by the Umbrella Security Service as they attempted to detain the scientist and retrieve the G-Virus. Left with no other options for survival, Birkin would inject himself with the virus he'd for so long studied and become Patient Zero of G. A turn of events that would spell disaster for Raccoon City and unleash G on its unknowing populace. At first, Birkin would retain many of his mental faculties. But as the virus continued to mutate and chip away more and more at the once well-respected scientist, he would devolve into a hulking, incoherent brute, driven only by the instinct to survive and reproduce. An instinct that would lead him to infect several of the humans that he would come into contact with while lurking around the city's sewer system with a G embryo, a parasitic creature produced by a G host. However, while Birkin may have been relatively prolific at infecting those he came into contact with, adoption of a host to a G embryo was a very selective process. Only those with similar DNA to Patient Zero would see any kind of success at mutation with G. Most subjects would reject the embryo outright, causing a sort of chest-bursting effect where the embryo would escape the host's body in search of another. Those with more DNA similarities would evolve into hulking beasts themselves, but still they would be underdeveloped, being much less resilient than G's Patient Zero. In the end, it would be theorized that only those with extremely close DNA to patient zero would have any chance at truly adapting to the G virus. Biological children, for example, being the only ones who may have a shot. And to these people, G, or Birkin in this instance, would be instinctively drawn, infecting those with relatively similar DNA along the way. Gs are some of the most powerful enemies that Leon and Claire will encounter during their adventures, whether they be Birkin or his malformed children in the sewers. These abominations are exceptionally difficult POWs to go up against, their disturbingly twisted bodies and sickening attacks making them a nightmare that will haunt the dreams of the Raccoon City survivors for the rest of their lives. And while they may not have fully adapted to the extent of the original host, these underdeveloped monsters have more than enough power to deal with any would-be heroes that may stumble into the dark of their territory.